Good morning and welcome. So this morning we are going live. Now we were expecting to have the magnificent James Sinclair with us. Unfortunately, he's been unable to make it as a result of issues with small people that he's related to. We often have the same issues. So sadly he can't be with us, but he has promised that he will be coming back in a few weeks' time. And so I thought, well, what can we do? And so I thought, well, let's find another James to fill in. And so hence we invited Jim James back. And as Jim's just pointed out, it's a bit like your Brinner convention. And to be honest with you, God only made so many perfect heads, and 2 of them are here. The rest of them are covered with hair. What can you do? I'm looking at the hairy lot over here. Bless them.
That's because they're younger.
Yes, bless them. There's time, like we can get you all shaved.
Yeah.
So
the corporate look.
As many of you will have seen over the last few months, we've had Jim in on a couple of occasions talking around the subject of PR and the way modern PR kind of fits and actually encompasses a much bigger scope of things. And we've been working with Jim to actually get the whole of his Speak PR program up and to the point where actually it can be a valuable tool to businesses all over the country and indeed the world. And it's now to the point where actually the whole program is going live, and that's really exciting. So today I've asked Jim to actually just come in and give an overview of the system, and then we'll ask a few questions, answer any questions that you have that you want to throw out around it, and then we'll also bring Mark in to really just have a little explore about how anyone might be able to access some of this stuff and actually use it in their businesses, because moving forward, I think the elements of PR will become more and more important, if you like, the soft marketing side. So Jim, welcome.
Thanks very much. Yes, it's great to be at the Brinner convention once again.
Yes, indeed.
I guess we did this with Andy and the change up, and we'll thanks again for letting me, share the stage, and really want to share where we're at with the Speak PR program. And for those of you that don't know, I've been running an international public relations agency, East West PR, for over 25 years. I started it in Singapore in '95, then in China in 2006. And in India in 2009, and then back in the UK last year. I've also run other companies around the world, including importing Morgan sports cars to China. So I've been both an entrepreneur and a PR person for quite a while. And what I wanted to do really was to take the knowledge and the skills that big companies pay us for and make those into a mastermind that business owners can use for themselves. But that's the idea. Because many companies, about 98% of all companies are less than 250 people. And most companies actually don't need an agency, or when they go to an agency, they're not necessarily happy with the results. And I think that's partly a mismatch with the understanding of what an agency can do, and also the readiness on the behalf of the company itself. So today I want to just talk about a way that you as business owners can help to take people that are either antagonists or even just ignorant of your businesses and to make them into evangelists using public relations. Just close that one webinar window. Lecture chat window. So there we go. Yeah, there's a third. Let's see what we're doing. Okay. Can you all see the presentation?
Not yet.
There we go. So we've got a presentation for you. There we go. That's why we're so busy looking at ourselves over here. There we go. Okay. Okay, he's looking at the chat. We're just looking at ourselves. Right.
It's not like
okay. So here we've got. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Not the screen. It's good to work with professionals.
You didn't tell me you wanted to go live, did you?
I didn't realize I had to say that. I have to give all the instructions I can see. Okay, so today's concept really around Speak PR, thank you, is going from taking people that are working with you and making them from antagonists to evangelists. And remember that when we talk about the people that are with you, often people think about public relations as being media relations external, but I like to think of public relations as being communications with three audience groups. That's the internal group that would comprise of your staff, for example. Then you have partners, who are all those people that help you to get your business going. They could be suppliers, they can be government, they can be vendors. They're people that you either pay in one way or another. And the third group, which people normally think about, are the customers themselves. But in order to get a company to be successful, actually, we need all three groups to be aligned with the vision of what we're doing as entrepreneurs. And the point of the mastermind, the Speak PR mastermind, is that it's possible to get people to go from being unaware of your company to becoming evangelists of your company by using a framework, and that's really what I'm going to share with you today. There, okay. So this is from Seth Godin, the marketing guru. Marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories that we tell. Okay? Plato said actually that history belongs to the people that tell the stories. Similar idea. This idea that we now need to set into context for people what we're doing. The reason for this is because stories are how we take information and assimilate it. In this day and age of lots and lots of internet information and so on, there's too much data, there's too much information moving around too quickly. So it's almost impossible for us to make sense of it all. So what we do is we use narratives, which are in the form of stories, to help create context for ourselves to understand what's going on. This is not a new phenomenon, we've done it since the Bible or before. It's been the way that society passes on stories through cultures so that people can understand their role in that society. And now how we can help our company to communicate is by creating stories. And what I've done is I've called this in the Speak PR, I've called it storification. Now, in the journey from ignorance through to evangelism, I'd like to propose to you there are 5 stages. And when I say, do you have buy-in? That means, do you have buy-in from the internal audience, from the partners, and from the external into your business? So I've categorized this in 5 stages. The first is ignorance. So ignorance is people don't know about your business. The second is awareness. The third is interest. The fourth is engagement. And only once they've gone through that stage of engagement and are happy do they become evangelists. Now, the first of all is ignorance. If people haven't heard of your brand, they may not even identify with the need of what you're selling, for example. So often, especially when we're introducing new things, as a company, my PR firm, East West, we've introduced things like predictive text, for example. So predictive text entry, back in 1998, people didn't even know they needed mobile phones. We were convincing people they needed a way to put data entry into phones. So sometimes people aren't even aware of the problem we're trying to solve. The second is an awareness, not only of the problem and an acceptance of that, but of what you do. So they start to see, to hear, to read, be told about your brand and what you do. Then, if we're lucky, they start to show some interest. So they start to make some inquiries. They start to maybe make a visit to your store or to your restaurant, to your facility or to your website. And then they start to go through the stages of purchase. And this is where, if we get it right, they move from awareness through interest to engagement. But along the way, there are lots of places that we can get it wrong. I have a podcast at Speak PR, and one of the podcasts the other day was about the use of literature and the use of color and the use of whether we are using emotions or facts to get people to move through the funnel into a purchasing situation. There are lots and lots of ways that we can lose people along the way. Another one I talk about is the on-site chat, for example, and how many of us actually have an online chat on our websites. Because if we don't have that, for example, it's like having a showroom and no shop assistants. So they go from interest to engagement, and this is where someone makes a commitment to your company to spend money. They receive value. Now the question really is, do they stay or do they go? There's a song there. Should I say that's there? It's a clash. So they engage with your company, and the question is that a positive experience for them? Customer experience, and there's a group out of Ireland have the CX Academy, for example, and they're dedicated to training people on customer experience. And the customer experience is important because we're now operating in a world where many products and services are commodities. And because we can buy or price online, the experience in the engagement is the one part that is hard to replace online. So what can we do to generate engagement? Now, if the engagement is brilliant and wonderful and people feel absolutely enthused when they come away, then they become evangelists. And this is really where PR takes off. And it takes off because other people tell people they're happy. A great example of this is Apple. Right? So I have an Apple device, and during the lockdown, we needed to get all the children on all the digital devices, and all the parents are talking to one another. And I said, oh, well, you can use the family sharing device and the code's on Apple, and you can use it across this device and this device and this device. I became an evangelist for the Apple ecosystem to people that were using non-Apple products, because I'm very happy about what I get from that experience. So what we can do with public relations is we can help people to move from ignorance through awareness, through interest, through engagement, and through evangelism. Now, there are some questions you can ask yourself which will help you identify the stage that your company is at. There are more questions than this, but often we don't ask ourselves, for example, how often do you have to explain what you do to other people? Now, in China, I was selling Morgan sports cars, right? So I had this great idea. I'd import a great British icon to China and convince everyone to buy cars that are handmade of wood. Now, in China, people couldn't understand why they'd buy a car made of wood and that had been made for over 100 years this way. It didn't seem illogical. I had to explain a lot. I had to make the story about Morgan. When I came back to England, people said, oh, what a great business. Everyone's heard of Morgan. So how often do you have to explain what you do? Now, when do potential customers call you? Do they call you? If people call you all the time, then you're obviously got people sharing and they're already aware of you. Maybe you've got evangelists. But if no one's calling you, then you've probably got ignorance issue. So why do customers buy from your competitors? Is it because the customer engagement that you've had with them is not great? So they go somewhere else, or they just don't know about you. I talk about the 3 different audience groups. So who applies for jobs in your company? That's a great barometer of how well known your company is. If no one ever applies for a job in your company, is it a company that people have heard of? So where do you have to go to meet new customers? Do you go online? Do you have to go to other Facebook groups? Do you have to go to trade shows, virtual ones? And which customers keep coming back? So these are different questions that you can ask yourself about your company, so you can start to identify where you're at on those 5 stages. So what we're trying to do is to get your company from ignorance to introduction, from awareness through to solicitation, without the negative connotation. I realize, if anyone's thinking about that. Interest through to encouragement, encouraging them to take part in what we're doing. Engagement is about delivering value and about the customer seeing value in what they're getting. Because if they get value, they will want to become evangelists. And then how do we reward them for becoming evangelists? Promotion coupons, welcome and thank you events, for example. For me, this is all public relations, because public relations is all related to how we relate to the three different stakeholder groups in our company. It's more than press relations. It's all the communications that we have with the people that matter to our business. So now I'd like to take you through the format, the mastermind, the structure. So we've created a 5-stage process called Speak Beyond. Handily, so Storify, which is about creating the events in your business into chapters. Okay? Often people think about their business at one moment in time with a little bit of maybe a comment about the history, maybe a little bit of a thought about the future. And it makes a very hard story. All great stories are written in chapters, and they have protagonists, and they have antagonists, and they have problems, and they have challenges, and they overcome those. So part of what we look to do with the client is to help build a narrative that you can use. The next is to personalize the message. And I'll share with you about this concept of personalization at scale. It's about creating avatars for the people that you want to talk to, but also understanding where they are at within the journey of this ignorance through being an evangelist, but also where they're at with their personal journey in their day. Engagement is about creating compelling content. Because with social media, we have this amazing opportunity of owned media. It's no longer about just trying to pursue the interests of the media that are published, but we can control our own channels. In fact, more and more of the content that you see on, for example, CNN or the BBC is provided by third-party platforms that are content that is created and syndicated to them. The fourth part is amplification. And amplification, I'm going to share with you, there are over 8,000 tools that you can use to amplify the message of your business. 8,000. And I've interviewed the man in America that creates the mind map that I'm going to share with you. Most of us rely on 3 or 4. So we're going to talk about the ones that you can use. And then knowing is about measuring results. And we talk about the active communication index because that's what we call a productivity index. In the same way that revenue is vanity and profit is sanity, actually page views and click-throughs are vanity actually. What we really want to know is how much did we do? How much work did we put in? Because if we get that right, then the other metrics will take care of themselves. A little bit of detail, wrong screen. There we go. So, thymos is the Latin for the need, the emotional need for recognition. Okay? The reason that we put all of our stories now with the central focus being the customer or the member of staff all the time is because the best way to take someone from being ignorant to being an evangelist is to make the business about them. It's no longer about the business, it's about the results you get for the person who is involved in the business. So this is the sea change, if you like, in marketing theory that's taken place around this idea of storytelling. Storytelling used to be the narrative about you, the business, and all about you and what you're doing. But just like if you met somebody socially, and if I met Pete and he said, let me tell you about myself, and half an hour later I was going, oh, yeah, okay.
I think you'd find you'd still be stimulated.
I'd still be stimulated. I'd still be on the edge of my chair, much like I am now, but I might also be looking for Andy and going, rescue it. So, just in the same way that socially we like this, it's because of this concept called time, which is recognition is at the heart of what everybody is looking for. And you see this when it comes to employee engagement, for example. It's why people like to take selfies with people. So storification is about you as a business owner helping to take the customer or the member of staff or the partner on a journey. And the convention that's being talked about is what they call the ABT, which is the and, but, and therefore. There's a guy called Park Howell who has written a book called The Business's Story, and I've interviewed him as well. And it's all based on this idea that there's a vision of what could be. Let me tell you what life could be like. It would be perfect if everybody knew about your business. If everyone wanted to do business with you, you simply just waited for them to come and then you found a slot. But the problem is they don't know about you. The problem is that they can't afford you. The problem is that they don't know how to get hold of you. The problem is they haven't got the time. So all these reasons why not. Therefore, which is the T in the ABT, therefore we're open 24 hours a day. We're open 7 days a week. We're open online. We have flexible payment. So storification is all about helping your customer to be the hero in the story. Okay. So this is the first part, identifying what problems you're solving for the people you're solving them for and making them an essential part of your public relations narrative. We used to call them case studies, and they used to be kind of a tangent, like a small part of the PR. Now they're really central. And with social media, it's essential because people that are the central part of the story share the story that they're in. And that's how you get viral. Yeah. Now, the second part is personalization. Now, personalization has two elements to it. So one is about looking at the avatar. Who is the ideal person that you want to recruit, that you want to partner with, or that you want to sell to? Okay. Who is that ideal person? We draw that out and we think of them as it by gender, by age, by education, by sporting preference, by eating preference, and so on. But then the next thing we need to think about is that they have a routine. They're not the same person every day. So they have a daily routine, they have a weekly routine, they have a monthly routine, they have an annual routine. Now the reason this is important is because I've mentioned personalization at scale. The technology now enables you to decide what you want to send to which person, on which device, at which time. This is the transformation that digital allows. It used to be that we got the newspaper or the monthly magazine, and it arrived, and you read it in the morning on the train, you read the evening one on the train on the way home, or people got it on the weekends. And that was their opportunity to be reached. But now with a mobile phone or an iPad, or with Netflix, or whatever device and channel you're using, you can tailor a message specifically. And as we know, if you use Facebook ads, you can buy by geography, by age, by gender, by education, by home ownership or not. Personalization at scale is your opportunity. And it's a public relations opportunity because the content you're creating isn't advertised. It's engaging content that is relevant to those people, but more often than not is now created by them and shared themselves because you've made them the center of the story. You've made them the hero. So engagement is around creating compelling content. There are lots and lots of different formats of content. Text, video, infographics, voice, displays, point of sale material, flyers, or banners, you name it, right? Lots of different ways that you can create compelling content. I've created this 5-stage methodology, and the key part of this slide is that it's a flow. It never stops. And in the same way that you're trying to get people from ignorance through to becoming evangelists, what we have to do is we have to keep this content coming, because at any stage, people get distracted by something else. people see on average 5,000 adverts a day, okay, which is a phenomenal amount. So people are constantly getting distracted. We need to remain constantly creating engaging content. So we need to storify, we need to personalize, we need to engage, we need to amplify, we know, then we come back. What we're trying to do with that content, which is the heart of all public relations now, what we're trying to do is to identify the audience, the messages, and the objectives for those. And we want to have engagement, we want to have discussion, we want to have participation, and ultimately we want to have loyalty, because it's much more expensive to get new customers than to get repeat customers. I think that number's about 6 or 7 times, right? So this flywheel means that we are creating content that has participation from our members of staff, from our partners, and from our customers. Because alone it's quite hard to generate the story, but also the story isn't just about us anymore. It's about everybody that's on that journey with us as well. Now, this is the MarTech map. I'm going to take a quick sip of coffee whilst I give you a quick look at that. Now, so this is compiled by an amazing man in America who I've interviewed on the podcast. And he has called this the second golden age of MarTech, marketing technology. He calls it that because the first golden age of MarTech was in the mid-90s and early 2000s, when there were a few silos of technology, but you had to just do, for example, MailChimp on its own. You just had to have a website on its own. And nothing spoke to each other. Maybe you remember they had to manage this better. The second age is the integration of these different technologies, sometimes using a platform like Zapier, or Zapier, depending on, I guess, if you're French or not. But if you use an integration tool like Zapier between the different platforms, but there are some more and more monolithic platforms, like, for example, HubSpot, or Buffer, or Prowly, which is just being bought by SEMrush. Now, what they've done with this mind map here is to break these down into different aspects. You've got advertising, promotion, content and experience, commerce and sales, data management. And some of these platforms like Salesforce.com integrate many of them, and some of them are in their own. All you need to really take away from this slide is that there are tools out there that can do the work for you. And almost all of them have got a free offering. Okay? If you use something like Zoho, which I use, it's $40 per month per user, and it has 52 different packs. You can use something like MailChimp as a platform now that has got a CRM and a MailChimp and an SMS integrated for like $12 a month. So there are many, many technologies, and the coolest thing about all of this is you do not have to be a technology expert to use them. Okay? They're all remarkably easy to use, some harder than others, excuse me. But what it means is that if you're currently using 2 or 3 platforms, I can guarantee that you're going to find a way to increase your content distribution just by using 1 or 2 more of these tools. Because the view that I've got is that just revenue is vanity and profit is sanity, that actually what you put in is sanity, and all the page views and the impressions are really vanity. I've created this index called the Active Communications Index. And here, all I like to do is to measure what content you've created, where you've put it, and how often you've done it. Because the problem with looking at some metrics like Google Analytics, it shows you millions and millions, or I've got 50,000 page sessions in the last month on my website, which is fantastic. It doesn't tell me how much work I put into getting 50,000 page views, right? So it's a bit like being an athlete and having a great cardio, but actually what you really do is how much work did you have to do to get to that? Because that's the way you can train. That's the way you can get fitter. So the Active Communications Index is how you can measure your productivity. And what it means is if you're doing this yourself, or if you're working with a team, you can have a straightforward number where you can say how many press releases, or how many articles, or how many photographs, or how many tweets are we putting out this week? How many channels are we using? Are we using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest? I have a company sitting in China, so I use Weibo, WeChat, Youku, Douyin, right? So you have all these different channels, and then when are you doing it? Because if you're sending out material, but only on a Monday morning, and you run a school, then it's probably too late for the people that need it to be prepared on a Sunday night. So looking at these 3 dimensions for your activity simplifies it, but it also means that you've got a known number that you can. So this is the Speed PR program that I'm working with Mark and the team here, and Peter and Andy, to offer to the Progress Shed. These are tools that we've developed which are editable. We've actually built these as modules online. So we have these 5 different stages of storify, personalize, engage, amplify, and to know. And what we're going to do is to work with a limited number of people per intake, per mastermind, so that we can help individual companies and business owners to develop their own PR plans. I work with companies that are a couple hundred to $1 billion in revenue each year, right? So they can afford to pay agencies to come and do the work for them. But many companies cannot. But the other problem is that many companies engage an agency without really knowing how to instruct an agency. And the mastermind planner is here to give companies the structure. So when they have a conversation with the PR agency, they know what to ask for. So we've got this, first of all, the key message and the storify, which is turning the events into chapters. I've already explained the methodology and the theory, so I'm not going to drill down too deep into this. But you'll see here we've got supporting messages and we've got proof points. Who do you want to talk to? We need to personalize the message, and we have a structure for doing that. We have a timetable for looking at when are we going to engage people and where are we going to send the messages. We've got those 8,000, but I've got a tool that's already available that you can use, which helps to simplify that greatly. And then the knowing is the measurable results, where we can just simply fill this in and we get a number. Okay, so some very simple tools and templates that I've used and built over 25 years with over 500 clients. So I know this works. It's just normally agencies don't share what they get paid to do with their clients. Here I'd like to give you the tools so that you can work on it yourself and with us in the mastermind. This is the planner that we work with. So the idea is that everybody's got stories. The problem is that people get tied up with thinking, the only thing I can tell is if I've got a new company announcement, like a new office or a new member of staff. But actually there are stories happening every day in your organization because you're doing things every day, right? Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. Yesterday, I posted a kudos on LinkedIn for a member of my team, Grace in Singapore, because she's managed to bring up her daughter, and her daughter's just come to Dundee in the UK from Singapore. Grace is completely made up, but I'm also made up because she's never missed a beat in terms of the work she's done. And yet she's raised a daughter who's now studying criminology in the UK from Singapore. So I give her a shout out on LinkedIn for that. So every day, somebody in your organization customer, a partner, or a member of the team is doing something that you can celebrate. Okay. So what we do when we work with clients is we ask that question. Don't be embarrassed, don't be shy. It doesn't always have to be earth-shattering. But on that content flying wheel, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a narrative. Remember, we're creating a story, we're creating a chapter. And if you think how successful reality TV is, it's people watching people, actually. It's people going about their lives and people enjoying that. So how can you create that? This storyboard, extremely simple way of just starting to map out what you can do as an organization. I mentioned the 8,000 created by David in America, but I made it into a smaller directory of 100. So I've got a directory of 100 applications broken down by the different 5 stages, all of which have got some free elements. Okay. This is also available as a download PDF, and you can use that. Okay. So to make life a little bit easier, if you don't want to go through 8,000 shortlist. Okay. So that's the 3 elements. So we mentioned that we're building this as a progress shared East West PR group mastermind. There will only be 6 companies, 6 individuals per mastermind. And we're doing that because my experience of running masterminds is that it's the group within the mastermind and the sharing that becomes as powerful as the course content. So I've run masterminds all over the world on many different subjects, including entrepreneurship and marketing. And what I've done is I've structured this into an 8-week course where at the beginning there is more theory and towards the end you're doing more of your own work and using your own company to be the working practice. This is because as business owners, my view is that you don't want to learn this content and then come back and go, now I've got to use it on my company. And I was speaking to one person who wants to take part. She says, the problem with courses is she gets a big book of information about other companies and comes back and says, now I've got to do it on my company. So we're going to do the work on your company, okay? Because it makes sense. So the first week will be looking at how you can identify the value within your own business, which is the story that can be told and sold. I'm going to share with you the cascade theory, which underpins what it takes to get information to go viral by a theoretician called Watts, okay? And get you to help to understand that PR is not press releases. I'd like just to broaden the definition that PR is not.
That would, as well, you know, that's a question I would always throw at you anyway. So, like PR, traditionally businesses would say PR, that is press release. That's when I've done a charity event and raised 500 quid and I'm going to release it to the local press to get a bit of coverage. They view it as less important than other forms of advertising or marketing, etc. So, can I jump in there and ask you to actually give us a proper definition, in your eyes, of what PR actually is in the modern marketing?
Okay, I think that PR is about all the relationships you have with everybody that matters to you. Excuse me. So, and relationships are about influence, they're about encouragement, they're about friendship, they're about support, especially now. So I would put the emphasis on the relationships part of the work of PR rather than press relations. I'd say it's relationships, and that's why I define it as the internal and the external, and then the part.
And there's the business side of things. I think at one point you threw out, well, it's not so much press relations as profit relations.
I call it profitable relations because a couple of reasons. One is because if you're running a business, you're either trying to increase profit or reduce cost. We only exist, right? As Peter Drucker says, you know, business only exists to make a profit. Anything else you do is peripheral. So the way I like to define it is that if I can increase the value of the relationships between your business and your stakeholders, there's going to be a greater transfer of wealth between you and more quickly. And ultimately, that's what the business needs to do. So I think that the other part of this is that press relations in the traditional sense is dying because traditional press is dying. social media has destroyed print, but not just the physical element of print, but also because people like to publish their own, and companies like to publish their own content. And the number of journalists in the world has gone down. Just statistically, there are just fewer and fewer journalists. So week one is just to expand your mind a little bit and change the mindset that PR is not, oh, do you know a journalist in the Bath Chronicle? It can be that, right? It can be that. But there's a lot more, especially now you've got owned channels. And think about it, there are 8,000 platforms that you can use, like we're doing today. We're publishing our own content. So week two is talk about storification and learning what we call the opportunities, problems, solutions. The Americans call it ABT, but I like to think of it as OPS, opportunities, problems that you've identified, and the solutions. It's a little bit easier to understand. So this is really getting to the heart of the mission of your business. The third element is going to be, the third piece is going to be personalization. And this is about identifying the avatars for your business. Who are the people you want to employ? Who are the people you want to work with? Who are the people that you need to sell to? And I'm going to talk about Weo's law. And Weo's law, actually from a Scandinavian parliamentarian and professor, talks about how all communication is destined to fail. So I talk a little bit about that and talk about the need for avatars and the need then for being very clear about what you're communicating. Because if it's poorly done.
And Weo's law is really around the idea that if there's an opportunity for it to fail, it will choose to fail.
Exactly, and the whole I wrote an article about Boris Johnson and talking about how we need to work together, about having his fists down on the table, for example, and how that's a body language of frustration and angst, when actually he's saying to people, we should be relaxed and work together, like in harmony. So people communicate and miscommunicate. And having lived overseas for 25 years, I can tell you that the more you communicate internationally, the more chance there are for that. So personalization at scale can take place, and you can use technology to overcome those laws. So engagement is about content being king, but how do you create enough of it, and how do you create it so that it's compelling? Okay? How can you use tools like Canva, for example, to create animate? I can use tools like videos, to create compelling content without it costing actually anything. So it's amazingly cool and amazingly free. Week 5 is around application, using batch processing, learning how to use automation, using how to use hashtags, learning how to use campaign orchestration. All of these technologies can be learned, and I delegate this now to a team in the Philippines. Okay, so once you've built the process and you've defined the brand, you can then create a workflow that can be delegated. Okay, so that I'm going to talk about that in week 5, and then week 6 is the active communications index. And the reason for having a productivity metrics is because I think it's a bit antithetical to PR. Most people say the reason I don't like PR is because I can't measure it. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. You can measure it, but you just don't try and measure how many leads you necessarily get or how you measure what you put in. So by putting in a framework, you can then transfer the work of PR type of people.
And if you have an idea of what goes in, you can also therefore have a view of what comes out.
Exactly.
And begin to create that marriage between activity and results, even when the two aren't perfectly matched, which is to my mind one of the big challenges with all of the social media side of things, particularly that actually you do all this work and you don't know if it's just stuff going out to the ether.
And what happens is, for example, you might find that you send out the same number of pieces of content on LinkedIn, for example. So you can see the productivity index says you've got a score of 5, but the viewing numbers are entirely different. So that's happened to me the last week. So what we've then done is looked at why and spoke to a company that does that. And it's because how quickly your post gets reshared makes a difference to the algorithms putting it into the content stream of all the people that follow, right? So by measuring how much goes in and seeing the outcome, we can start to track the productivity, the effectiveness of what we've done. Okay, so exactly. So making PR count, as it were, you know, is I think a key part. So in the week 7, what we do is we look at sharing, and then we have one-on-one coaching. So we'll have the sharings from the people in the mastermind, because they'll be using their own company in building the mastermind program to speak themselves. So they come to the forum and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we've learned, these are the issues we've got. We're also going to have a separate session with Mark Allen and myself with the individual company to say, okay, let's look at what you specifically need, what's happening for your company, because everyone's got different needs. And then week 7, week 8 will be the same, where we'll hopefully have people who learned the theory, put it into place, increase their active communication index week by week. We've got stories that are saying, these are the successes that I've got. And because you've got 6 companies there, everyone in there is learning not just from me and myself and Mark, but learning from one another. Okay? So that would then be an 8-week program, and that will give people a methodology and a framework and the tools that they can then use themselves with or without an agency.
Thanks.
Okay? So that is, I think, the way that we want to help people go and find people to go from being an antagonist to an antagonist using PR. The key point here is that the entrepreneur is the protagonist.
Excellent. So that's kind of a much bigger overview of the systems model. And at this point, we were hoping that Mark would be here to come in. Unfortunately, he's being dragged away for other purposes. So
Well, you and I can do it.
We'll do it.
We can.
But I suppose initially, at this point, Speed PR has been developed as an overall program for small businesses. And whenever I come across any sort of course or any sort of program or any sort of development, I suppose my first question will always be, well, what's the purpose of it? So Speed PR, what is the purpose of Speed PR?
The purpose of Speed PR is to help business owners to unlock the value of their own company without needing an agency. So most of my friends, all of my friends, are pretty much entrepreneurs. I've started groups like the Entrepreneur Group in China, for example. To this day, my friends send me questions about how can they share the value they've got in their mobile phone app or their service for delivery. How can they do that? And it's not advertising, it's not direct marketing, it's building this overall plan progress. So it's really to help entrepreneurs, and this is as a tool set, it's free. The mastermind, we have an introductory offer, right? So it's normally $2,500 for the program. For the first 6 that come in with us, we're just charging $1,500 for this program, right?
What do they do? They just need to send an email to.
Send an email to
so info@progressshed.co.uk.
Yep.
.com. So info@progressshed.com. Or just give us a phone call on 013.
And we've only got 4 places left. We've already got 2 people signed up. We're going to start this in October, so that we finish by December. So the real purpose of this is because I love to see companies succeed. And good friends of mine that run companies, their number one problem is that they just can't get anyone to know about what they're doing. That's the big ask for most small businesses. And I can solve that because I've done that for 500 plus big companies. So I know how to do it. And I just want to share that by giving them these tools.
So the purpose is to help small businesses to succeed with their
to make sales, ultimately to make
marketing,
sales.
But really their soft marketing that leads through, rather than what people generally think of as how do I spend my money to get a return.
And really to help them do this in ways that are free, right? So they can use these tools, and they're all really about some creativity and free tools, so they can generate some leads and some inquiries. The selling is another story altogether.
And I suppose my second question then is, what's the frustration that you solve for businesses?
I think the ability to articulate what it is they do clearly and concisely. Most entrepreneurs can talk at length about what they do, but what most entrepreneurs struggle with is making that into a message that someone else is the hero. in there, because we're often thinking about what we do, not just about the result we bring to somebody else. So this tool set enables them to view the value they're bringing for their customer, their partner.
Okay, and ultimately, I suppose the core purpose of any sort of course or any sort of program or anything you invest into your business is what is the ultimate benefit to the business?
Yeah, exactly. So what companies will have at the end of the 8 weeks is they will have a working and an active public relations program. So for the less than the cost of sending a press release to an agency, they're actually going to have a framework, a set of documents, but also they're going to have an understanding and really the beginning of the content of their story that they can use in social media. So the goal is that they will be self-sustaining and have their own PR plan and tools and platforms that they can do the communications themselves.
And so the initial intake is 6 businesses, of which I think 2 already signed up.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
and I think there are another 2 actually that Mark's just about there. So
okay,
spaces on that initial intake are limited now, but it's £1,500 for the intake.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the investment for the 8-week program that leaves you with that working PR program.
Exactly, yeah.
And are there sort of guarantees to back up that offer?
Sure. Well, look, if people are not happy at the end of 8 weeks, we'll happily give them their money back. You know, the whole point of this is to help companies. Okay, well, reluctantly, between us, he'll give his share back. It won't be my fault. No, if of course, the whole point of this, like you've been doing with the progress shed, is we're here to serve, and if we're not serving, then we don't deserve to be paid. So I've worked delivering value for clients for 25 years, helping them to get noticed. I know this works, but if it doesn't work for someone for whatever reason, then of course we'd give them their money back.
Great. So any businesses who are actually interested in pushing themselves forward, developing this whole program, please get in touch. hello@theprogressshed.com, just been provided with the correct email, or just give us a call, talk to Mark on 01225 944 404. If Mark's not available, then you can talk to any member of the team here, and we'd be happy to talk you through it. The offer is there. Please get on board. Please find out more. And today, thank you, Jim, for coming in.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And obviously, this program we believe is a bit of a game changer for most small businesses. And if you can get it with an offer with a guarantee like that, what is their solution? On that note, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for joining us. Bye now.